This is part 5 of a 5-part video series on local VFR and uncontrolled airfield operations. On this sortie, we depart 35 right and go back to NTA Ponca City to shoot the full procedure VOR Alpha approach, then head to NTA Guthrie for some ELP practice, then recover to Vance through Foxtrot. As part of your ground ops, program the GPS with the required waypoints and put the Ponca City ASOS and Pioneer VOR frequencies in standby. As covered in part 2 of this series, plan on flying the pod stereo route and canceling IFR prior to pods. Here, the aircraft is VFR 10 miles south of the Pioneer VOR, inbound for the full procedure VOR Alpha approach, circled to runway 35. Based on the current 010 heading and 111 inbound course, to execute the hold in lieu of procedure turn, you could either choose a teardrop or direct entry for the non-standard left-hand holding pattern over the Pioneer VOR. For the teardrop entry, after crossing the VOR, turn left to a heading of 319. If a direct entry is flown, fly wings level for 15 seconds after passing over the VOR, and then turn left to a heading of 291 to fly the outbound leg of the holding pattern. The reason for the 15 seconds on the 010 heading after crossing the VOR is on this heading the aircraft is nearly perpendicular to the outbound course, so only about 90 degrees of heading change is required to fly outbound. At the recommended T6 holding speed of 120 to 150 knots, the turn radius to turn 90 degrees is approximately 3/4 of a mile. When flying outbound during the hold, the ideal no-wind spacing from the inbound course is 1.5 miles. 1.5 miles is the approximate turn radius for 180 degrees using 30 degrees of bank at 120 to 150 knots. Here, the teardrop entry is being flown. The 319 heading will be held for 1 minute before paralleling the inbound course or turning inbound to intercept the 111 course. Ensure you remain within 10 miles of the VOR. Once established inbound and cleared for the approach, you may descend to at or above 2,300 feet MSL. Here, the aircraft is approximately a half mile from the final approach fix. Since the final approach fix is the Pioneer VOR, the aircraft will pass through the cone of confusion, also known as the cone of ambiguity. The aircraft does not receive a signal from the VOR above the station. As you approach the VOR, the CDI will go full scale and then slowly recenter as you fly away from the VOR. It is imperative you not chase the CDI as you fly near the VOR. Instead, maintain the heading that kept you on course when you were several miles away from the VOR. Once the HSI shows a to-from flag flip, as a technique, execute the 6 Ts from the 11-248. Here, the aircraft is over the final approach fix on the 111 degree freeze heading with the airfield environment in sight 3 miles off the nose. On this approach, the aircraft must descend approximately 800 feet in 1.2 miles to get to the MDA by 1.5 miles from the runway. This equates to a descent rate of 1,300 feet per minute on the VSI. Any delay initiating the descent from the final approach fix to the MDA will result in not being able to safely reach the MDA prior to the desired 1.5 DME to commence the circle and enter the left downwind for runway 35. Here's a 3-minute video clip of this approach flown in the simulator. Once complete with training at Ponca City, depart the pattern and proceed to Guthrie and climb to a VFR cruise altitude. En route, listen to the Guthrie ASOS. At Guthrie, ELPs will be practiced. GA pilots working on their commercial pilot's license also fly ELPs, but they're called steep spirals or power-off approaches as described in the FAA-produced Airplane Flying Handbook. GA traffic does not use the terminology keys, such as high key and low key. 10 miles from the airfield, make a radio call on CTAF announcing your arrival and intentions. An example radio call is Guthrie traffic, T6 Texan 2, 10 miles north of the airfield, 4,500 feet, will be executing a left steep spiral to runway 34, Guthrie. For mid-air collision avoidance, entering the NTA visual traffic pattern from high key and practicing ELPs is not recommended when other aircraft are already established in the pattern. To align yourself with runway 34 when arriving from the north, you could execute a 180-degree turn at high key altitude. A second option is to execute a power-off 180-degree descent to high key from a beam in the high key position. As you probably know from your EP studies, 2,000 feet of altitude is required to execute a 360-degree turn with a feather propeller. With high key being 3,600 feet to 4,100 feet MSL at Guthrie, here the aircraft is 1,000 feet above high key, about 1 mile west of the threshold to runway 34. Here the torque is set 46% and a glide established to arrive at high key at approximately 4,100 feet MSL. And here the aircraft is about halfway through the glide to high key. Above the landing runway, put the landing gear down and continue your turn to low key. The aircraft is now at low key and the flaps have been placed to takeoff. Make a radio call approaching low key. Guthrie traffic, T6 Texan 2, left downwind runway 34, Guthrie. At base key, select flaps landing once landing is assured if wind conditions dictate the use of landing flaps. Make another radio call if desired. Guthrie traffic, T6 Texan 2, left base runway 34, Guthrie. Once complete at Guthrie, proceed direct to Foxtrot at a VFR cruise altitude. Here, weather permits 6,500 feet MSL. The distance from Guthrie to Foxtrot is 30 miles, so 4,500 feet is also an option. Do not climb higher than 6,500 feet in order to stay below the east Lomoas. As soon as able, get the Vance ATIS, do your guts check, and contact Vance arrival as described earlier in this video series. If recovering VFR to Foxtrot, be at 2,800 feet MSL by 5 miles from Foxtrot and do your radio call. Texan 13, Foxtrot. Just like with the Echo recovery described earlier in this video series, descend to 2,300 feet MSL and do your guts check.